You know that specific kind of heavy silence? The kind that settles in the car right after you pull into the driveway, long before anyone reaches for the door handle. You are sitting right next to her, someone you chose, someone you care about deeply, and yet, looking over at her, you suddenly feel completely, entirely alone. It is like looking at a stranger through a fogged-up window, wondering how two people who used to finish each other's sentences ended up trapped in this quiet standoff. And right there in the dark, your internal monologue starts spinning out of control. Why does this keep happening? Is this just what modern dating feels like, or did I miss a massive red flag somewhere along the way? Am I the problem for questioning her choices, or am I just ignoring things I shouldn't? Here is a bold, counterintuitive truth that flips everything you think you know on its head. The tension in your relationship isn't caused by the ink on her skin. It's caused by the story you've written about what that ink means. You are not failing at love, and wondering about compatibility isn't a sign that you are judgmental. Every person who has ever navigated modern romance has stood right where you are standing, trying to reconcile who someone is with the symbols they choose to brand onto their body. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the psychology behind why women get tattoos, how body modification intersects with attachment styles and personal history, and the very real relational risks you need to evaluate before investing your heart. Let's get into it. Most people believe that a woman getting tattoos is just a harmless fashion choice, a creative outlet, or a rebellious phase she'll eventually grow out of. But the real truth is much deeper. For many women, tattoo is not just art on skin. It is externalized armor, a permanent reclamation of bodily autonomy, or a visual map of unresolved survival history. When you look at heavily tattooed skin, your partner's nervous system is often communicating something her words won't say. When early safety, validation, or emotional stability is missing in a person's past, the human mind instinctively looks for a way to take control of its own narrative. Pain can be managed. Ink is permanent. What looks like aesthetic rebellion to the outside world is often a psychological strategy for self-soothing, boundary setting, or staking a claim over one's own physical vessel. This connects directly to attachment science. An avoidant partner might use body modification as a physical boundary that pushes people away before they can get too close, while an anxious partner might use it as a permanent cry for validation, shouting an identity into the void so the world is forced to look. When you react to her tattoos with judgment, criticism, or traditional assumptions, her nervous system reads it as a direct threat to her sovereignty. What feels like a casual opinion to you feels like a profound rejection of who she is to her. But here is what changes everything. When you stop viewing her ink as a red flag to critique and start viewing it as a window into her psychological landscape, you move from standing across a battlefield to standing side by side with genuine curiosity. Most couples fall into the trap of assuming that how a partner decorates their body has zero bearing on how they handle long-term commitments. You think ink is just ink, but here is the deeper psychological truth. The psychological impulse behind making a permanent physical alteration is often tied to how a person handles finality. Some people use permanent art because they are terrified of internal impermanence. They want to freeze a feeling, a memory, or an era so they never have to grieve losing it. Think about how this plays out in real life. The disconnecting version sounds like this. Why would you permanently mark your arm with something you might regret in 10 years? It makes no sense. The connecting version sounds completely different. I noticed this piece on your arm is really detailed. What's the story behind why you wanted to make that permanent? And when you ask that question with genuine warmth, the walls between you start to come down without either of you having to say a word. Most people in relationships look at bold body art and assume it's an invitation to engage. But here's the part no one talks about. Tattoos can function as a psychological fortress. For a woman who has experienced emotional violation, boundary crossing, or a lack of safety in her past, looking intimidating or unapproachable is a survival strategy. Her brain is quietly registering, if I look untouchable, maybe no one will try to break through. Consider the difference in approach. A disconnected partner says, "You always look so harsh or unapproachable when you dress like that." An emotionally intelligent partner realizes something profound. What looks like a hard exterior is often just a very tender person protecting a very soft inside. That's the shift that turns a relationship from a contest of wills into a safe harbor, where she finally feels safe enough to take off the armor. Most couples expect their partner's identity to remain stable and predictable from the day they meet. But what happens when a woman uses tattoos as a live-action evolution of self? This is where it gets really interesting. Many women use body modification to violently break away from a past version of themselves, a childhood of people-pleasing, a restrictive family dynamic, or a past relationship where they felt silenced. Here is what's moving through her internal monologue in those moments of change. I refuse to let anyone else write my story anymore. If you meet this with control, saying, I liked you better before you got all those pieces, you are accidentally telling her that you preferred her when she was small and quiet. But if you meet it with acceptance, saying, I love watching you step into who you actually are, even when it looks different than expected, that's when your partner stops feeling like a problem to manage and starts feeling like a person to come home to. Most people believe that excitement in a relationship comes from outside adventures, but many people seek out physical sensations, including the ritualistic pain and dopamine rush of getting tattooed, because their internal world feels stagnant, numb, or anxious. When life feels overwhelming or emotionally flat, sitting in the chair and enduring the needle provides a controlled environment where she is entirely in control of her own physical stimulation. Notice the contrast in how triggers are handled. A reactive partner sighs and says, another tattoo? Where are we even getting the money for this? A conscious partner pauses and asks, hey, you've been seem a bit restless lately. Are you craving a change? Or is something heavy on your mind? And when you do that, the superficial argument dissolves into a real, vulnerable conversation about what she's actually seeking beneath the surface. Most couples assume that subcultural aesthetics don't impact day-to-day relational compatibility, but they often mask deeply divergent value systems regarding family, career, and social presentation. Here's the risk no one warns you about. If you value traditional social structures and social conformity, dating someone whose visual identity deliberately rejects those norms can create a persistent, low-grade friction in public spaces, family gatherings, and future planning. This isn't a communication hack. This is just what two emotionally mature people do when they assess core compatibility. The disconnecting approach is trying to change her presentation to fit your family's expectations. The connecting approach is asking yourself honestly, can I love this woman for exactly who she is in the daylight? Or am I hoping she'll turn into someone else tomorrow? When you get radically honest with yourself out there, you either find profound acceptance or the clarity you both deserve. This isn't a checklist for evaluating whether a woman is good or bad based on her skin. It's an invitation to look past the surface layer of aesthetic choices and see the human nervous system, history, and heart living underneath. And that changes everything about what's possible between you and the person you chose. When you internalize this, you stop reacting to superficial triggers and start responding to actual emotional reality. And your partner will feel the difference before you've even said a word. Real intimacy doesn't start when you find someone whose aesthetic matches your expectations. It starts when you decide to become curious enough to understand their story. What is one boundary or lifestyle difference in your relationship that you've been misinterpreting as a red flag? Let me know in the comments below, and let's talk about it.